A huge part of my hunting strategy is casting as wide of a net as possible, and trail cameras play an integral role in that. I want to cover as much ground as possible, get an idea of the bucks in the area so I can target the biggest and the best. A lot of people are just getting into trail cameras and they're wondering how to pick a trail camera, how to set one up properly to maximize their results instead of getting pictures of the sky or getting pictures of nothing but grass blowing around. I'm going to walk you through my process of how I pick an area, what kind of tree I set it up on, and start to finish to make sure you're maximizing your results from your trail cameras. Hey, if you like this kind of content, make sure you subscribe to my channel. You can follow along with all of my adventures throughout the rest of the year. I'm going to be hunting 4 or 5 different states, trying to find and kill the biggest bucks I possibly can, and I'm going to walk through my strategy for all of that as I go. But for starters, we're going to talk about why you would pick a location to put a trail camera, because if you don't have a good location, it doesn't matter how good your trail camera is, or if you set it up properly on the tree, you're not going to get good pictures. So just like hunting, you're going to want to scout to make sure the area you're going to be hanging a camera is going to be favorable for you. So you're going to want to find an area that concentrates deer. So whether that's a bait pile or a mineral site, it could be a fence crossing or a creek crossing, maybe a standing bean field, or what I like to do a lot is a mock scrape. But you have to find some way to make sure those deer are gonna walk in front of your camera. That's how these things work. You're getting just a blip of your total hunting area, just a blip in space of what is happening there. So today we have this field. I'm in the process of turning it into a food plot, but we are gonna put out some minerals for the deer. We have the Whitetail Institute minerals. It's good for the development of the fawns, good for development of antlers. Also attracts them so you can get good inventory of what bucks are in the area. So that's step number 1. So once you've identified a spot where you're gonna have deer walking in front of consistently, the next step is finding an adequate tree, a tree that's not gonna be blowing around in the wind. I like to find a tree that's at least a little bit wider than the camera. We're gonna use this tree behind me here. As you can see, it's wider than the profile of the camera. But there's a couple nuances that you got to be careful of. For one, the direction you face that camera is super important. What you want to avoid is facing your camera directly east or directly west, because the rising and setting sun will trigger your camera and you'll get a lot of pictures of nothing. The best case scenario is to face your camera as north as possible, because it rises in the east, sets in the west. South is also a good second option, but if at all possible, you want to set your cameras facing north. Here we have this tree facing directly north to where I want to have these minerals that I'm going to put out. So we have a tree picked out in an area that's going to concentrate deer. The tree is wider than the camera and it's going to be facing north. The next is trying to figure out what height to hang your camera. And generally, I think the best pictures and videos are going to be somewhere from 3 to 5 feet. Occasionally, especially on public land, I will hang them high just to keep them out of sight of potential thieves and other hunters. Occasionally I will also hang them about as high as I can reach just to keep them out of the line of the sight of deer. But anywhere, somewhere from knees to shoulder is a safe bet. But the other thing to consider is grass growing up. We're in the summer right now, things are actively growing. So you want to kind of predict if you're going to have things growing up that are going to blow around in front of your camera. So for this tree right here, I'm going to do it right about there. I think it's a good height where you're going to get a wide field of view and you're going to end up with some really great pictures and videos. The other thing to strongly consider is how far away from the camera you're anticipating the deer movement. I'd say the ideal range is somewhere between 10 and 15 feet. You don't want to be trying to get pictures of deer 50 feet away. Even the best cameras are going to be pixely and distorted that far away. So somewhere between 10, 15 feet is going to be kind of that sweet spot where you're going to end up with really high quality videos and pictures. You're going to be able to count tines and tell exactly how big a buck is, or just admire whatever wildlife you're trying to get pictures of. So now we're going to go ahead. I have a Moultrie Mobile Edge. These are super dependable, super user-friendly cameras. But we're going to get this one strapped on the tree. Most of them just come with a simple pull strap. You run it through itself. So we got the camera on there. Now there's an accessory that is a must-have, and there's products out there that people are actually trying to get you to buy stuff, but I have a trusty stick, and what that's used for is to tilt the camera angle just slightly down. In most cases, when you hang a camera, it's just a little bit too high, so you want to have it tilted slightly down. So I'm going to loosen my strap just slightly, tuck this stick behind the top there, and then tighten that strap down so it stays. So now the angle of the camera is just slightly down, pointing more towards where we want it to go. And that takes some playing with, it takes some experience. I've been running cameras for a long time. But if you don't do this, I have a buddy named These Nuts. I'm not gonna give you a last name, but I went out to check cameras with him, and I think you could see the blue sky in the background because they were pointed so high. So this is a really super important part of trail cameras and aiming them properly. Now, a lot of cameras these days have a Bluetooth option where you can actually download the app, look at what the camera is showing right from the phone. But what you can do if you're running just a regular trail camera, if your camera doesn't have that capability, is open your front-facing camera and lay it as flat on the face of the camera as possible. And that's gonna give you a ballpark idea of what your camera is actually looking at. So I got it pointed pretty close to where I want it. I'm gonna leave it where it is. And then I'm gonna wrap this strap around. What you don't wanna do is leave this strap and it will blow around in front of your camera and you'll waste all of your battery in a matter of a couple of days and have nothing to show for it. So I'm gonna wrap that, tuck that in so it's not blowing around. All right, so our camera is set now, and as you can probably see behind me, it's relatively windy. So now, if I wasn't in as open of an area as I'm in right now, I would be going through, and if there's overhanging branches, I would be trimming those or breaking them off to make sure nothing's gonna be flapping around, blowing into the view of the camera, triggering it. All I want pictures of are pictures of animals. I don't want pictures of grass blowing around. So I would come around, pull all these down in front of the camera to make sure there's as little foilage as possible. So now that our camera is set, we have to figure out what settings to put it on. And most cameras have the same settings. You either have the option to have them on picture or video mode. Some of them give you a hybrid, so it's gonna take a picture and then record a video. I personally really like that for most of my cameras. Or you can have it on a burst of pictures. So if it's a 3-picture burst, it's gonna take a picture, take a picture, take a picture. And that's handy if there's more deer walking behind the first one, or it's gonna give you different angles if you're trying to figure out what a buck's rack looks like. But then there's what's called the delay. So you have to figure out picture or video. If you're doing picture, you need to figure out how many pictures in a burst you wanna do, but then there's the delay. And the delay is basically telling the camera that after it takes those first 3 pictures, it's gonna take a break for 10 seconds, 20 seconds, a minute. So that way it's not just continually triggering. What I typically like to do, depending on what the situation is I like a 15 to 20 second delay. I like getting a lot of pictures. I load them up with big memory cards, which we'll talk about in a minute, but I want as much intel as possible, so I don't want to miss anything. If it's on picture mode, I'll run it on either a 2 or a 3 round burst, depending on what camera options you have, and then a 15, 20, or 30 second delay if that's the next lowest option that I have. So once you kind of dial those in, you're going to figure out certain situations where one might be more advantageous. So if you're on a corn pile, you might want a little bit longer delay, or you might only want it to take 1 picture at a time, because if a doe and a fawn are sitting there for an hour straight and you're taking a 3 round burst every 10 seconds, you're going to have thousands and thousands of pictures. You're going to burn up your batteries really fast. On the contrary, if you're just on a trail that you might only get 1 deer walking down every day, I'd personally have that on video mode, but minimally I would have it on a 3 round burst, and I'd be having as low of a delay as possible, but I normally wouldn't go any lower than 10 or 15 seconds. Once you get all that stuff dialed, you're pretty much set to go. And then one thing that I always do is drop a pin on my onX Hunt app so I know exactly where my trail cameras are. That way I can base my hunt strategy around what pictures I'm getting in that area, but also so I don't lose them and forget where my cameras are, because it does happen when you start running more than a couple. So other things to consider once you have your cell cam set is the SD card. And this is a Moultrie Mobile Edge. This has built-in memory, which is one thing I really like about these. There's no more fumbling around trying to make sure you get the right SD card or having it fill up on you. It's gonna automatically upload these photos to the cloud. I can see them right on my app or on my computer, and you don't have to worry about that. But if you have a more traditional trail camera, or if you have a different cell camera brand, you might need an SD card, and the manufacturers specify which kind to get. In most cases, you need a class 10 memory card, and that all has to do with the right speed. And then I would get as large of a capacity as possible, especially if you're running your cameras in high def or video mode, and you want to be able to leave your camera for long periods of time. In most cases, that's like a 32 gigabyte memory card. Again, this one's all built in, so you don't have to worry about it. And then batteries is the other big thing. Obviously, you don't want to have to come back mid-season to spots where you don't want to scare the deer away. You want to just be getting pictures and leave it unmolested. I either run energy lithium batteries most of the time, or a lot of cameras have rechargeable lithium battery packs or solar panels now, which make it really, really nice because your camera never dies. Lithium batteries are getting outrageously expensive, but I would try to get a name brand or at least some type of performance alkaline AA battery for your cameras. And then the last thing to figure out really is, when should you come back and check your camera? Obviously this is a cell camera. We'll be getting pictures sent remotely to our phone or computer, so we don't have to worry about coming back. But if this was just a regular trail camera, I want that intel. I want to know what's there, what bucks are in the area, so I can build a hunt strategy around it. And I have a couple different strategies. Sometimes I'll put a camera in or near a bedding area that's very, very intrusive, and I'll let those cameras soak for the entire fall. I won't go back in there unless I'm tracking a deer or happen to be hunting very, very close to that. But otherwise, I like having cameras at all my hunt locations because it's basically an eye in the woods when I'm not able to hunt. So I can keep tabs on if there's bucks actively going through a place that I want to hunt, if there's hot does in the area, if they're scraping, how many deer are in there, if they're hitting a certain food source, if there's acorns dropping, and I have a bunch of deer in a specific area, I want to know that. So those are my two main applications: a soaking cam, which I leave for a long period of time, or a hunt cam. And I'll typically only check those cameras as I come into hunt an area. So this camera's ready to go now. Before we flip it on, we're gonna pour some minerals out in front of it. Here in Ohio, that's legal to do. That'll help us get some buck inventory, but stay tuned. I'm gonna show you a couple different camera setups as we go today, so you can get a different perspective on some ideas of what you can do with your trail cameras. So now we're at the other end of this huge food plot. It doesn't look like a food plot, but it will come fall. And I watched a lot of bucks hit this scrape right in front of me over the course of this last hunting season. So I want a camera monitoring that scrape. Scrapes are incredible tools for getting buck inventory, even in the summertime when they're not actively scraping the ground. But if you're in a state that does not allow baiting or minerals, mock scrapes or a natural scrape is probably the best bet for getting good pictures. So we're gonna get this other multi-mobile hung up, pointed at this scrape. It's facing directly south, so it's not gonna get a lot of that east and west sun interference. And then we just gotta make sure we clear out any of this tall grass in front so it doesn't blow around. But this is a spot I'm very, very excited about and excited to have a camera set up. We're at our last spot for the day. I got another spot where I have a mock scrape, a scrape that I actually created last fall. Got a lot of good activity on it, and we sweetened it up with a mineral site off to the side. Again, I'm just trying to maximize my efforts, get as much inventory as possible throughout the summer, so I can start to make a hit list and figure out what bucks I really want to target. So we got this tree. This is about as skinny of a tree as I like to put my cameras on. If you put it on anything skinnier, one, the profile of your camera is sticking out and I feel like it gets picked off a little bit more when deer are walking by. And two, the wind blowing the tree around will trigger your camera. So we're gonna go ahead and get this last one set up. This one again is facing north, so it's not gonna have the sun rising or sun setting false triggering this camera. I did actually come in here a couple days ago with a weed eater and mow some of the stuff down so there's a lot less foliage. We're gonna take our trusty stick, angle the camera down just ever so slightly and tighten that up, and then make sure that strap isn't blowing around. If you follow the steps in this video, not only are you going to maximize your battery life, maximize your efforts in getting the best pictures and videos possible for whatever cameras you're running, but you're going to have a lot more fun. Trail camming is a lot of fun, almost as fun as hunting, but you're also going to be a more efficient hunter. So do these things, make sure you're scouting properly to find good trail camera locations, and above all, do not use trail cameras as a crutch. Too many people are over dependent on trail cameras. They are a tool in the toolbox. They're only supposed to enhance your scouting efforts, not replace your scouting efforts. But hopefully this video was helpful. You guys, make sure you like this video, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you in the next one.